coming through okay?
I can hear you good.
Great. So welcome everybody to this Fireside chat in our continuing Boston Azure, North Boston Azure combined virtual sessions. Tonight we're going to talk about Ignite, and we have some material to proactively share out from, so I'm Bill Wilder. We also have Jason Haley and Veronika Kolesnikova. And the three of us have some stuff we'd like to share with you, but would also be grateful to anybody who'd like to help make this interactive. And if you have further comments or feedback or points of your own, unmute and join the conversation. Briefly, you probably all know this, but you can find us on the Twitters on Boston Azure or North B-Town Azure. And there's a YouTube channel. The bit.ly link for the YouTube channel is bit.ly/Azure YouTube, all lowercase. And we've been posting videos of events like this on YouTube. So if you do engage in the conversation, be aware that your voice or image may appear in that video. If that's a problem, and you can let us know, and we might be able to edit you out. And there's also a Slack channel, bit.ly/BA Slack, all lowercase, to join us on Slack. There is also a side channel on Slack if you want to join that. It's the eloquently named Meeting Side Channel Chat Live. Other than that, we have some speakers lined up, but I don't believe we've established dates for those speakers yet. So we're still planning to keep our twice a month meeting cadence with virtual meetings, and so you know where to track us for that. And with that, I will turn it over to Jason.
Okay, let me share my screen. This guy here. Okay, can you see my screen?
I can.
All right, cool. So sort of following the same lines that we put together for the Build conference earlier this year, I put together a slide deck of stuff that I found interesting, and we're all kind of just going to go through round robin of stuff that we've picked out from the announcements and the new stuff that's out. So I've got a few links here that are really useful for anyone who wants to find out additional information other than what we're just presenting tonight. The first one is the Book of News, which is, any of you who aren't familiar with the Book of News, it's the announcements that were made from the conference. So if you go to the table of contents, you'll be able to see how they break it down. There's several sections. The ones that I paid attention to were in the Azure section. The category headers are kind of difficult to follow, but it's best just to scroll through it and see what you found. They do have some videos sprinkled around it too, which is somewhat nice to give you a quick overview. But that's a really good link to have if you're interested in finding out more about something. And then of course the sessions. So the last night this wasn't working. It was just a white screen. It must have had to do with the Azure AD issues last night. But if you go to the sessions link, you'll be able to search as you usually can on any of their conference sessions. And then they've done a really decent job this time around of highlighting resources. Some of them you can download the slide deck. Some of them have transcripts. What's over in the resources is slightly different depending on the topic or depending on the talk, but they've organized it a lot nicer than they do sometimes in the past. Sometimes you actually do want the slide deck, but you just can't seem to get to it. So you have to search the web and get to it. But nonetheless, those are two useful links that I've found in doing some of the research for tonight. So my picks. So I had basically three. The top two were the the main ones that I'm really keen on. So I don't know if you guys have heard, but this communication services product that they're coming out. It's a new product. I think it's in public preview now. It's been in private preview for a while, but it allows you. It's a service. So they provide SDKs in different languages that will allow you to do voice calling. So that's calling over the phone system, but you can also do voice over IP. You can do video over IP, chat, SMS. Really nice applications where like a lot of the stuff's remote these days. So I can totally see a lot of startups taking off with this stuff and really building some nice applications. Like one of the demos that they gave was a React demo with the context of like remote health, where a doctor wanted to talk to the patient, and then with the browser sharing the camera and the mic and all of that stuff, they could really build a nice interactive experience using this new service, which is really cool. Because I looked into doing some of this stuff in the past, and I didn't find one provider that really did it all. That you could find one to do the SMS. The phone number one was kind of difficult, but the other stuff was the VoIP stuff was a little easier. But that was one of the things that really caught my attention. It's not GA yet, so it's just coming out. But if you need some sort of a functionality to do chat, SMS, phone calling, and voice and video over IP functionality in your application, definitely check out this new service called Communication Services. One of the other things that really stuck out, which is like a no-brainer, useful piece, is they did a logic app to send an SMS. Like that's actually something I could find useful for. Just something that would call the function app and then ended up sending an SMS out to somebody. So the other one, as I'm looking at the participant list here, some of you I know used to go to my group when we met in person. You know that I'm interested in Kubernetes and the AKS service. So this was one thing that really stuck out to being super useful for me, was the ability to start and stop an AKS cluster. So especially when I do demos. So I do demos of an AKS cluster. I get things set up. I get stuff running in it. So it's running 24/7, and then you have to pay for it. But with this new feature, you can stop it. Basically, turn the machines off that the cluster's based on, which you haven't been able to do in the past, and then be able to turn it back on. So they've surfaced this functionality. It's currently not available in the portal, but you can do a command line and stop the service, which of course fits command line, allows you to kind of automate that and just do it on the command line. So that I really saw some value in, because it can totally save a lot of people money. I mean, you think about your dev environment, if it's up and running with 5 nodes, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, but if your developers aren't using it on weekends, that's 8 to 10 days a month that you could have the thing turned off, save yourself some money. So that really is something that piqued my interest. The Azure App Service, before I got heavily involved with Azure Kubernetes, I was always doing talks on Azure App Service or Web Jobs, something along those flavors. They're actually coming out with some interesting things as well, or things that I found interesting. They're coming out with some different plans, mainly geared around, it sounds like the Windows container release. So they have and also just machines keep improving and changing. So it's the next round of hardware improvements that they're making available to App Service. And they're coming out with a premium V plan. And let's see if I can, all right, so I didn't link it here. Let me see if I can find it. But they're also coming out with an isolated V2 plan, which that's the better known ACE, a App Service Environment, is what it used to be called. Then they moved it to isolated, but they're coming out of V2 of that, and pricing to go along with that. And they're now making reserved instance pricing available. So let me go to this link. which is kind of cool because my personal site's running on web apps, and I renew the domain every year, so I've got that for another year. So why not go ahead and get a year on the app service plan? Though I haven't quite figured out all the details of what plans they're going to have the reserved instances available. Not sure if it's going to be available for standard or if it's only available for this new premium v3. But if you look at the, so here's the premium v3, and you can see they actually up the machine size here too, so you can actually get 8 cores with 32 gigs of RAM if you want to pay for it. And if you can see, look at the savings that you can get if you go out. So dev test, 3 years. I mean, at 3 years, you're cheaper than a premium V2 1, and you've got like twice the machine. So the reserved instance is something I definitely want to check out for myself personally and for any clients to see whether or not it actually really fits in. I mean, 1 year seems like a no-brainer to me. Then, of course, they definitely highlight some of the stuff in here. One thing I didn't capture in my slides, and I might as well mention this now, is .NET 5. The release candidate is now available, and I believe the GA date is currently slotted for November 10th. Sometime in November, it's usually around the .NET Conf is when they do those. And I saw a slide sometime this week that's going to be a 3-day window for the .NET Conf this year. So look out for that next month. Actually, not next month yet. It's not October yet, but a little over a month. Look out for .NET 5 for those of you who are .NET Core or .NET developers, because it's going to be rewriting and migrating stuff at that point. So got a lot to learn to get up to speed on the .NET 5 stuff. So with the if you're out there and you're using app services, check out some of the new announcements. The new pricing stuff doesn't come available until October 1st, so you're not losing out on anything right now. But those were the main things that I really found interesting. A few of the other things that are related to work that I've done in the past and have kind of piqued my interest. They're introducing a new system metadata piece to blobs, which is the last access time. So you can find out the last time someone actually accessed that blob without having to do all that management yourself, which could be really useful. And Azure Cache for Redis. If any of you out there use the Redis cache that Azure, the Redis cache service that Azure provides, they are working with Redis Labs to come up with these 2 new levels, Enterprise and Enterprise Flash. And if you do use the cache, a Redis cache of any sort, especially with microservices, you soon learn that cache is a lot more expensive than what you want it to be, and it's never as big as you want it to be. So they've actually, with the Flash one, actually can go up to 1.5 terabytes. So that's like super big for a cache, but the pricing isn't available yet. So if you scroll down here, you'll see the pricing is not available. So don't know what that's going to cost, but the possibilities are definitely there. I'm not sure if it's going to be more than premium. There's a good chance it will be, but waiting to see what that shakes out to be. So that's something else that I've used Redis quite a bit in the past, and it works really well with a lot of applications. A couple other things that were interesting and really geared towards resiliency. They're really making an effort. They have a roadmap to provide the availability zone options in each of the countries and data centers in the next 24 months. So if any of you are out there using availability zones to get that a little bit more resiliency, to be able to get that the 4 nines, especially with VMs, they're really making an effort to roll that out to other data centers because it's not available in all data centers yet. And this one actually piqued my interest too. Not that I do a lot of disaster recovery, mainly because that's usually 2 data centers that you have to kind of keep in sync. or you have to be prepared for that disaster that doesn't seem to happen, where Azure flips the bit and says, yes, this data center is down, and the storage actually goes over. Since that usually doesn't happen, because they obviously don't want to lose the data. So I understand the arguments why they don't do it, but that read-write capability is a big drawback. So they're now introducing this zone-to-zone disaster recovery. So you could actually fail over to another availability zone in that same data center. So that's something to look forward to or look into if you are dealing with disaster recovery and can do basically one, say, city or region versus, East Coast, West Coast, data centers that are completely away from each other. If you could do like a zone disaster recovery, would that work for you? And if it would, check this out. And then to just round out the things that I kind of stuck out to me, these two other new services. One's called the Azure Resource Mover, and it pretty much is geared towards moving resources across subscriptions and regions, and making it a little bit easier and giving you one pane of glass to move resources versus moving individual resources and having to manage that all yourself. So I haven't looked into it too much, but it definitely sounds promising. It's one of those tools that are definitely come in handy for what it's designed to do. Not that you have to move stuff too often, but you check it out whenever you need to move some resources. Especially, I mean, like the networking components, managed disks. I mean, some of that stuff gets a little tricky to move all together. This one, I kind of read the announcement on this one and wasn't quite sure who they're gearing toward this product towards, but it's kind of one of those. It has a coolness factor to it. It's kind of how did they phrase it? Let me open this up. It's called Azure Orbital. It's kind of what is it? Here it is. It's kind of a ground station as a service. So they're not going to give you access to satellites, but if you're a company that has satellites and you need to surface communications from your satellites to a VNet in Azure, then this is a service that you can use to do that, which is, it's kind of far out there that they're actually introducing products that allow people with satellites to now get communications into the Azure network and system so that they can build products that utilize this Seattle satellite communications. Interesting product. It's probably nothing that I'll get to use, but if you're out there and you have satellites in orbit and need to get that stuff into your VNets in Azure, check this product out. But I thought that was pretty interesting. So they do have some new products out there in Azure, in the Azure realm. But those were my take on what I thought was pretty interesting. Anyone have any questions on any of those, or any additional banter to add to the products that I went over?
Glad to hear from audience here. I'll throw in that the Orbital announcement where they're dealing with satellites also struck me as, we're getting beyond the basics here, folks. The cloud is maturing, and we're adding the ability to integrate satellite data feeds securely. That's, as I said, we're beyond the basics, and that's kind of interesting.
Cool. So I stopped sharing. I think Veronika, you're up next, right?
Yeah, I can go next. I don't have fancy slides, and I don't have that many announcements because I'm going to cover the AI and machine learning since I'm a huge fan of all that stuff. But I have a bunch of web pages and a video I would like to share. So the first announcement that was really exciting, and it's around one of the cognitive services, that's Azure Cognitive Search, which is really popular. I know people use it in bots, people use it just separately on their websites or all kinds of applications, like mobile applications and stuff like that. So they added two main features there. One is an option to use private endpoints, like use Azure VNet there, and then role-based access control. So for sometimes when you're trying to access, you need special privileges, or you need to log into different things, and using the role-based access control, now you don't have to do it. So it's going to be automatically. Then, okay, I'm trying to read the chat, but I think I'm just going to continue with what I wanted to tell you, and then I'll reply to questions if you have any. So next announcement was also about the cognitive services, and they added a new decision service, and it is Metrics Advisor. Let me actually show you what's going on there. Let me share my screen. Lots of things going on there. Okay, I hope you can see it. That's my cheat sheet. But so basically, that's what's going on with decision services. That's a pretty new type of set of cognitive services on Azure. They just started adding them last year. You can see they all went GA. So now only Metrics Advisor, and this one is new. They just announced it last week during Ignite. They showed a bunch of applications for it, some demos. So if you need to monitor some metrics or try to research or provide some kind of diagnostic for your issues, you can use that machine learning support, and it will support your decisions. So you can make those decisions faster. It will notify you through different channels. You can connect it to email or messages, and it's really useful when you are working with heavy machinery, or maybe even if it's a website, like high-load website, and you need to make sure that everything is going right, and you are on top of it, and it's not just unavailable for a long time and you don't know what's going on. So that is really useful. All those services are awesome. The anomaly detector is, I think, the most popular here, and personalizer. I know there are a bunch of different tools for personalizations, but the cognitive services, I just love them so much, and they can be used in different environments. It doesn't have to be a .NET application. You don't have to use C# or Sharp or VB. It can be a mobile application, like native mobile application for iOS or Android, or Node.js application. It doesn't really matter. You can connect those cognitive services because those they actually have SDKs and APIs. But APIs, they're just REST APIs. You get in the key, you get in the endpoint, and then you can use them anywhere you want. Next one is really cool. They added a new feature to the computer vision, and it is spatial analysis. And they showcased how they actually used it for a project in a store. So they're figuring out social distancing. It is really relevant due to ongoing pandemic, and using that machine learning tool and using the computer vision cognitive service, they were able to calculate how many people are in the store and if they're keeping the social distance. I think it will be really useful even after the pandemic, because you can actually kind of create a research and figure out where people go in the store, what is more popular, how long they're staying in different places in the store. So you can move your, the things that you are selling, just move it around based on people's preferences. And let me show you the video. I'm not sure if you're gonna hear it, but at least you got it.
While that's playing, it's also a technology that looks like it would be useful in the modern office as we reopen, and we want to make sure that we're following reopening best practices.
Okay, so yeah, that is actually from Channel 9 AI show, but they showed the same examples during Ignite. I think it was Seth Horace. He's here, he's there, so it's the same video that they're showcasing, and it is really useful for stores, or as Bill mentioned, for office spaces when offices are reopened. And just, you can use them anywhere. So they showcased it here with a store. And it is, I know it is really important to, when you use AI, when using those models where you use actual people to figure out what's going on, then it's really important to be responsible and use it for good and not actually get any personal information. And you can see here that they actually use those squares to identify people. So they are not searching for faces. That is not a face recognition application. The computer vision in general can recognize faces if that's your goal, but for that it's not. So it depends. So it's totally up to developers how they want to use it. They are providing that option to provide spatial analysis and perform those actions using that cognitive service. And then the next one is that is just a blog post by Gary. He is covering the bot framework and conversational AI updates. They also released them during Ignite. That is not 100% Azure related, but it's still kind of Azure related, because in Azure you can create the Azure Web App Bot and then connect it to different channels. So usually when you're using bot framework, then you kind of tend to use Azure Web App Bot to actually connect it to different channels and monitor them and stuff like that. So it is kind of related to Azure too. And here we can see the bot framework composer. It is getting better and better. They just started talking about it at Build, but now it is improving a lot. It is integrated now with the Q&A Maker. That is another cognitive service, which is used for bots development a lot. And now it is, so before you had to go to separate portal and then create a Q&A Maker model there and train it there. Now you can go to that bot framework composer and just work with your Q&A Maker for your bot right there in that application. And then what else do we have? The orchestrator, that is, if you have, for example, you connect into Q&A Maker, and then you have several language understanding models all together in order to understand which model should be used for each question and answer. They use orchestrator. New bot framework was released, and then the bot services, Alexa channel, I'm a huge fan of it. I've been asking last year a lot about connection to Alexa and Google Assistant, so bot framework can be cross-platform. And finally, Alexa channel is generally available, so you can create your bot and then connect it to Alexa right on Azure. And yeah, here he has some links to the sessions. Okay, so what else do I have? Okay, so you can create multi-language bots. Before it supported only only English in the Composer. And then the Composer can be connected to Power Virtual Agents in Powerapps. So you can start creating it there and then connect it to another bot that you created using the Composer, or you can export wherever you did in Composer and then import it to the Power Virtual Agent. So different, maybe you have a team, some people in the team, they are developers, so they prefer to actually write code, and they have knowledge about language understanding and cognitive services and Q&A Maker and the bot framework. So for them, it's more convenient to use the Composer or write the code from scratch. And maybe other part of the team, they are not developers, they don't have that kind of background, they don't write code. So they use the Powerapps to create Power Virtual Agents. Those are bots too. And then you can combine different bots together or different pieces of one bot using different tools. So that's really cool. And then the last one here is WhatsApp support. That is also really cool. So the more channels you can access, always the better. So Microsoft partnered with Infobip. Infobip created an adapter. So now when you use Azure Web App Bot, you can also connect to WhatsApp. And that's what I wanted to share. And I will also have a comment about .NET 5. I know Jason mentioned it. So they're going to release it on November 10th, and that will be .NET Conf November 10, 11, 12. So yeah, that's what I wanted to share. Any questions? Okay, I don't see any questions. Oh yeah, and I wanted to actually do a shameless self-promotion, and yeah, I forgot that I stopped sharing, but I was an MC, and we actually managed a table talk at Ignite with 3 other amazing MVPs in AI, and we also created a discussion on the tech community website, and it's still going on there. So if you want to check it out, I'm going to share the link. You can leave your comments, your insights, maybe you have some questions, and we'll be able to discuss it more or find answers. And tech community is just a pretty good platform that they used a lot during Ignite for all kinds of conversations, because that table talk and table topics, that was something new that they came up this year, and I think it was a great success. I really enjoyed it. Okay, if we don't have any more questions, then I'm gonna pass it to Bill.
Veronika, yeah, I don't have a question, but hi. I just have a comment regarding AI. You know, with all the Powerapps announcements at Ignite, I started playing around with Powerapps in the AI Builder. I don't know if you played with the AI Builder inside of Powerapps, but it's ridiculously easy. You can just start a wizard and upload photos, start dragging boxes around objects, tag them, and then you've got an app that can recognize objects. I just want to throw that out there and say it's pretty neat for such a simple thing.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, I checked it out too, and it was great. I'm glad you tried it. Okay, if we don't have any more questions or comments, then I'm gonna pass it to Bill Wilder.
Thanks, Veronika. On screen, I think you can see Veronika's or what some of Veronika's work at Ignite. So cool stuff. And to the point just made, that just goes to show how mature this cloud thing is getting. Right, we have a few clicks for object recognition. We have these super powerful cognitive services and these other frameworks. We can help you with your satellites orbiting the world. We're really up in the cloud now. So the cloud world is certainly maturing. And hopefully you see on screen a big dollar sign here. As I was reviewing some of the material from Ignite, I also got the sense of such familiarity that there are more talks on enticing organizations to come to the cloud, because it has this elastic capacity thing. It's global, so you don't have to build out infrastructure to have your systems be able to be available in huge percentage of the world. Some of the things Jason mentioned around cost management, one of the examples was with the ability to turn off Kubernetes cluster. So that this conversation sounded incredibly familiar, except just 10 years in. So the cloud is maturing a lot, and the details are different. Kubernetes didn't exist when the cloud first started to be a thing, when Azure surfaced, but the arguments are all the same. We're just getting better and better at them. And one of the other, speaking of clouds, you know, in the old days, the cloud was it was the Microsoft cloud, and the Google cloud and the Amazon cloud, and I think there were some clouds that have come and gone in the meantime as well. And we have other clouds today, Alibaba, I guess. But Microsoft's focus on their cloud has gone from having the best cloud to having the cloud that now there's a new battleground. So a lot of battlegrounds, right? Which cloud is your primary cloud? And for a lot of bigger organizations, there isn't an answer, right? Because they go multi-cloud. Some companies are all in one cloud, not everybody. Then there are other questions around, like, who is your identity provider? Does Azure AD, you know, Office 365 win that, or is it the Google ID or other ID systems and so forth? Another battleground. But another one is, once you have multiple clouds, how are you managing the overall system, the one pane of glass nirvana, to really see what's happening across all of your infrastructure, whether it's Azure or Google or Amazon. And there were some announcements at Ignite this year around those things, a number of improvements, Azure Arc, which is Azure plus on-prem plus other cloud management tool that helps bring signals into a single pane of glass, had a bunch of announcements. So they're certainly, Microsoft is certainly keeping up their tech intensity as they grow from being a cloud competitor to the overarching cloud, it seems. Or this is more related to my first slide. The arguments are still the same around cost. You can give back resources that you don't need and such. And it talks about you may have to invest to get on to Azure. That's the migration section in the top left. But eventually, the argument goes, if you do that and you take advantage of all that the cloud can do, your costs will stabilize at a lower level. Your mileage may vary, of course. And just a couple of comments about security in the cloud. So close a couple of these things. So Microsoft has a pretty sophisticated, so cloud security is a big topic, and it's a complex topic, and there are lots of teams and products at Microsoft that help address the how do I keep this thing secure question. And was it last year? It was about a year ago that their SIEM solution, Azure Sentinel, went into GA. I believe it was might have been a year ago at Ignite. Well, this year they've added more to the story. They've done some consolidation and rebranding. So I mentioned Azure Arc. That's part of the security solution. Now it can help you manage more things. I don't have a list, but you can easily find them. Like I noticed that Azure SQL Managed Instances was on the list, for example, and a bunch of other SKUs. So they're constantly investing, as I mentioned. There's the simplification in their branding has happened. So they're now as Microsoft Defender brand has grown to be more encompassing, and there's a concept of XDR, and those are resources, extended detection and response. Those are resources that cloud resources that you're managing, and you want to know what's happening in real time. You want to do preventive stuff as well, and then that's all going to be under the Azure Security Center umbrella. And then there's all the partner to that is Azure Sentinel, which is a bigger picture view of different kind of view of all your logging and data signals. And part of the Defender thing is that I'm not sure if the Advanced Threat Protection brand is gone, but it seems like they've rebranded a lot of stuff to be Azure Defender now. So not only there's a Microsoft Defender and a Windows, I'm not sure if Windows Defender is gone actually and folded into something, but Windows Defender has been around for a while. But now there's Azure Defender and a couple of flavors of that for defending your Azure-focused resources. And I was thinking I'd give you folks a quick peek at Azure Security Center, and that's also been remodeled with this new Defender branding in mind. And before I jump over there, they've also done some work with one interesting one is they have something called Microsoft Tunnel, and this allows you to connect your smartphone devices to resources securely. So interesting. I haven't seen them really play in that security of the device space in that way. So let me drag over. Hopefully everybody sees my web browser. And I'm gonna just quickly spend a couple minutes in Security Center. And they've done a nice job. Well, this is one of the announcements from Ignite, where they've done a nice job of, let me move Veronika off screen there. They've done a nice job of cleaning it up and making it even easier to see what's going on. I have a lot of subscriptions. This is my work account, so I filtered it down to just a couple that are not production workloads. But you can filter your subscriptions here, which ones you want to see in Azure Security Center. Typically, you probably want to see them all. And this is the summary up top. I have 40 active security recommendations and 19 security alerts. This is a non-production workload, so hopefully your numbers are much smaller for production workloads. But this is all I really need to know. Mostly I come in to Security Center and I really want to know about, I'm here because there's some interesting alert. And you can see that there's more details here on the page. A lot of this information was on the page before, but now it's a little bit reorganized. On the left here, the navigation, it has recommendations. And they do a lot of focus on the security score. And this kind of gamified the securing of your environment. Because you like, oh no, I don't have all 60 points I could get. So so that's a kind of pretty visible theme throughout the Security Center these days. You can look at alerts, and this was referenced above, and you can see somebody's kind of trying to brute force through SSH one of our dev servers, and some other various sorts of attacks that detected traffic from an IP address that they recommend we block. And if you drill into one of these, there's a server there, some sort of a VM, and you can, so they're trying to brute force the root account and from some IP address, and if you scoop the IP address and run it through whatever tools you use to see if an IP address is bad, you would get results consistent with this, but they're already telling you it's bad. They recommend, you saw the recommendation pop up there that there's probably something you want to block. They know it's from this city in China. And just to validate, I did ahead of time, I ran this IP against a tool I use that just runs it against a bunch of different IP security lists. And they all said, oh yeah, this IP is bad news. And this is Azure Maps API telling us, yep, definitely it thinks it's from China rather, and it's not a Tor IP address. So anyway, to just say, this is a little time saver here. It's consistent and it's it's correct, and you can take action and so forth. So that's been a feature in there, but now it's a little more convenient to get at. You can do an asset inventory, and these are all the assets that you have. If I had all my subscriptions, it'd be a lot more, but it's a nice view. And there's a community section, and these are a little dated, I guess. I looked at a couple of them. They didn't seem to be like Ignite level. They were a couple months old. And then again, the gamified security score, regulatory compliance. So if you're like your ISO 27001, that's a common standard that some, especially international organizations, will expect their cloud providers to be. So if you're providing them a workload on Azure, they would expect not only Azure to be ISO 27001, but also your workloads. So you can test your workloads against this. 3 of 20 pass controls in our dev environment. And then the rebranded Azure Defender is here with more details. So from my perspective, this is a pretty clean, pretty actionable, nicely tidied up home screen for Azure Security Center. And with that, I am jumping back over to, actually, yeah, we actually want to show one more thing. They also have this what's new that's kind of handy. So if you're, as I do, if you go into Security Center frequently and you wonder what they just changed or what's just come out, you can see there are a ton of things dropped in September in the time frame for Ignite, Kubernetes workload protection, exempt from key vaults, and so forth. So with that, I'm going to stop and ask if there are anybody want to make any more points about these announcements or add any announcements of your own. Anything that you were hoping would be announced at Ignite, something that you think is missing and we wish we had it?
Quiet group.
Any comments? Mark, Bill, Zach, any more from Robert? Any other fine folks out there?
I thought it was a pretty quiet show. Nothing, like you said, I think somebody said at the beginning, there was nothing barnstorming here. So it was a good, solid set of details. I agreed with Jason. The being able to start and stop an AKS cluster is very handy. And for another reason that I don't think he did mention is sometimes I feel the cluster has just gotten into a state that I don't care for, and it can be a real nuisance to manually restart all the pods. And so this will be a nice, convenient way to handle that. So that was a good one for me.
Hadn't thought of that. That's interesting.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. I can see a comment here from Andrew. One wish list in Ignite, the volume control in Teams would be nice. Yeah, I know that they're improving Teams and they're working on new features. And actually, so the new cool feature that we were able to use during our table talk was the together mode. So it's really cool when people actually turn on their cameras during meeting, and then you are in that together mode and you can see like everyone is sitting in the same place. So it's cool when you don't see people in person, then at least virtually you can be in the same place.
And some background on that feature, our user experience team actually found out, they did research to find that this matrix view that most of us are looking at becomes visually exhausting and mentally exhausting after about 25 minutes. So that's when they started to come up with things like the together mode. And I think we introduced, they talked from the beginning that there was going to be more than one. And so I understand that was one of the announcements this week, was that the coffee shop and conference room, I think, were the two they introduced this time. So we'll see how it plays. It's a little weird because sometimes you get people like Bill's head would be extremely large and Jason's would be normal in the view, but we'll get that sorted out.
Yeah, I one of the announcements I liked was the Bicep announcement. You know, the programming language for ARM templates, because I do a lot with ARM templates, and turning it. You know, whoever thought they could turn JSON into a programming language must have been crazy. So Bicep has great potential.
I'm not a programming language man.
Well, if you do PowerShell, you are.
His name is Jason, I think, was the.
Yeah, Jason with an A, right? Yeah, no, I saw some of that one, but yeah, Bicep, such a funny name.
Well, it's an ARM template, right? It's the muscle in the arm, right?
Yeah. Okay, I get it now. You know, it didn't dawn on me till you just said that.
Yeah, I've been working with Microsoft on the preview, the internal preview of that. It's coming along.
Cool.
What's the language like, Bill?
It's a domain-specific language for writing ARM templates, but it's more of a programming language. It doesn't suffer from all the wordiness and all the cruft that you get when you try to use JSON as a programming language. You know, it's much more compact. It does generate ARM templates as an intermediate language. So and you can go back. You will be able to go backwards from JSON into Bicep. And it's more, I see it as kind of a competitor to Terraform, but we'll see.
Makes sense. So that's is that in the preview kind of stage where it's not ready for prime time? Just still figuring it out.
Yeah, it's like 0.01. It's December. They figure they'll have a release in December, I think. I don't know if I should say that or not. But I'm going to jail now. Okay. I think Mark Rusinovich demonstrated it at Ignite in his session, and I think he said December is what they're shooting for, version 0.3 or 1.0. We'll see.
Excellent. Yeah, definitely. ARM templates can use some more abstraction.
Absolutely.
Cool. Thanks for that, Bill. Do we have any other points from anybody else?
I just wanted to give a little plug to Granite State Code Camp. It's coming up November 14. Obviously, it's an online event, but we're trying to make it not just another online event. Check it out at granitestatecodecamp.org. Jason posted it in the chat here. I'm building a capture the flag competition. It's going to be open before the event and after the event, all skill levels. We're trying to make it a really interesting thing for everyone. Still looking for speakers. A few more days. The speaker call for papers is open, especially if you can bring us a little more diversity to our lineup. So I just wanted to get that out there and let everyone know.
Thanks, Robert. I've been to Granite State Code Camp in the past, and I look forward to it this year. So I'll be talking to you in November.
All right.
Hey, by the way, one thing I forgot to mention: Bicep is an open preview. It's out there on GitHub. You can take a look at it. You can see where they are.
Cool.
Has there been much discussion in this group about the GitHub Actions and how that's replacing DevOps pipelines?
No.
Yeah, because there was in Hanselman's keynote, and there were some other sessions too on what can be done with GitHub Actions. So if anybody's into DevOps pipelines, I would recommend you start building up the action skill. And it's getting pretty robust. I believe it's at feature parity at this point. and it's definitely the future.
That's great insight. I didn't pick up on that, Mark.
Yeah, we've been soft pedaling it so we don't do the Silverlight thing all over again.
Voice experience.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I put a GitHub action to use just experimentally, probably earlier this month, I guess. It wasn't the smoothest of all experiences, but it worked.
Yeah, I would concur with that assessment. It's still somewhat, let's say, industrial in the experience. But like I said, strategic, this is very much like if you remember when .NET Core came out and some of us were saying framework's done and this is where the future, this is where the innovation is going to be done. It's the same story here. The two, I don't know if you're aware, the two engineering teams were merged about a year ago. So all of the experience that's in Azure DevOps pipelines is in the GitHub team now, and so that's why they're being able to rapidly bring it to parity. I didn't necessarily understand why we needed something completely separate, but the GitHub thing is, it's a religion, it's a culture. So it's the future.
Yeah, I remember there was a huge debate between supporters of Azure DevOps and GitHub Actions. So I don't know, for now they're gonna keep both and they're not getting rid of one or another. I guess it's for different audience. You know, there is some hardcore GitHub fans and hardcore Azure DevOps fans. So
we need to be clear on that. So we're not going to leave the people who are using Azure DevOps high and dry, but there is no question what the future is. So remaining, it's kind of like being a Windows 10 mobile fan. That was a position that just wasn't useful after a while. So I'm encouraging everyone to not to jump off of Azure DevOps now. You don't have to. The TFS story is still broken. The Team Foundation version control story is still broken, but it's coming along, and we'll get that one fixed. Apparently, it is very difficult to go from a centralized history to a distributed history. It's non-trivial, but to my mind, it's just software. We'll get it done. But yeah, let's be clear. This is where we're going. So I get it. I personally prefer, Bill's 100% right. The GitHub Actions experience is not awesome at this point. The DevOps experience is way better, but it's in the end, it's not going to matter.
So maybe it's a good time to get a GitHub Actions talk on our radar for future Boston Azure.
Yeah, for sure. The group would be well served by that. I'm not in a position to offer you that expertise.
Yeah, James.
We'll get a resource.
James was going to present on GitOps, so I'm not quite sure. I'm trying to touch base with him to see if he's still on, but I don't have a description of his talks. But the topic was GitOps.
Yeah, I haven't quite figured out what that is, but I know it exists.
Yeah. Well, oftentimes it has to do with the whole something reacting from a Git check-in to update your Kubernetes cluster. So it may not really be geared towards specific.
How's that different than DevOps?
It usually requires something running in the cluster to pull it from the repo versus push.
Ah, okay.
But I don't know. We'll see if he presents it. He would be able to answer that question better than me.
Okay. Yeah, because AKS has a pull model now, I think. I may be wrong on that.
I think anything's possible.
Yeah, no, of course. But
yeah, as soon as he lets me know, I'll get that posted.
Sounds good.
So perhaps, thank you for adding that extra insight there, Mark. So GitHub Actions, the future. Bicep, something we want to consider as a merging potential DSL on top of raw ARM templates, which are super clunky. And Granite State Code Camp. You can submit a talk and you can attend. I will probably do both. So with that, Jason or Veronika, do you have anything else to add as we get into wrap-up mode?
I'm good. I'll get this posted up later on this evening to YouTube channel.
Thanks, everybody, and appreciate everybody helping make it interactive.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Night all.
Go watch. I heard there's a sporting event later. The presidential debate.